Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the second episode of the GABP, the Generally Average Baseball Podcast. Today, Carson and I are going to be breaking down the draft. It happened last weekend on Sunday through, I believe, Tuesday. And we're also going to be giving you some of our boldest predictions for the second half of the season. So, Carson, first things first, we should talk a little bit about how our mock drafts went and how everything shaped up. A little bit of a surprise going in the top three there. I think we'll cover that a little bit, as well as some prep bats jumping in to the middle of the first round that maybe no one really expected or they expected before the season, but they kind of jumped in there last second that no one really saw coming. So you want to go ahead and get us started?
Yeah, so kind of like AC said, I realize the toughness now that comes along with mock drafting. When you're going in it, you
uh,
obviously think you got every pick right, and you have this rhyme or reason why you think that pick's gonna fit. But surely after even the first pick for me, I realized that it wasn't gonna be going exactly how I thought. I think AC ended with like 4 out of the 30 right, and I ended I think with three. I think that was the
yeah,
number with the breakdown.
yep,
Um, and had a couple that, like I said, fit the where it went. But obviously, with Bazana going one, that just threw a wrench in my original thoughts. And then we'll get into the number two pick, Chase Burns, a little bit later. At least I will. And I really think that's kind of how we can go here and kind of talk about most surprising pick. And I'll kind of lead into that first. And we can kind of go from there. But my most surprising pick was Chase Burns going number two overall. Obviously, there were some prep bats, like you said, like PJ Morlando, that snuck into that middle of that first round. But when you can get a prep bat, sometimes they start going, and then other teams just keep on getting them. And I think we kind of saw that in this draft. But with Chase Burns there at two, I was super surprised. I'm a huge Chase Burns fan. I love the pick. I think at the minimum, he gives you an electric pitcher that can get you wins, either at the minimum out of the bullpen and hopefully into a starter and top of the line starter in the future. And I did see today that just before we started this podcast that he just signed for the highest
yep.
signing bonus of all time, which is crazy to think. But the Reds, I think, even saved 400 or 500,000 from their slot bonus or this bonus pool with that pick. So I just kind of went with that with the most surprising. I thought the Reds were for sure going bat with that pick. If it was Condon, Caglione, Weatherholt, whoever it was, I really saw them going with a bat. So that's why I went with Chase Burns kind of as my surprise pick at the number two spot with the Reds.
Yeah, I considered a few guys for this as well. I had Chase Burns was definitely in that mix. I also had Christian Moore in that mix at number 8. That was really surprising. I had him, I think I had him around 13, somewhere in that range. So he didn't jump too high up on the board, but I just thought that there were some more intriguing players at number 8 for the Angels to take. But the one that really stood out to me was actually at the bottom of the first round, with the Yankees taking Ben Hess out of Alabama. Um, I kind of had this feeling that they were going to go ahead and take a college pitcher. But Ben Hess was not somebody that I saw in many mock drafts in the first round, and I definitely didn't have him in my first round either. I think that he had a 5+ ERA, and you can say that the stuff is going to be great and it might play up and he might be even better. But sometimes you just got to look at production, and looking at his production, I didn't have him as a first round talent necessarily. So to see him go at 26 was a little bit surprising. But again, you're playing the slot game here and saving some money by taking him. Most likely, I'm not sure if he's signed yet, but it did allow them to be a bit more aggressive later in the draft.
For sure, for sure. I have him, and this will kind of go into my next section that we're going to talk a little bit about this draft as the worst pick. So I actually had two people listed as my worst picks in the first round for two totally different reasons why I have them listed. But the Ben Hess pick to me seemed exactly for all the reasons that you just said. Yeah, if everything clicks, his stuff is good. He's got the size, he's got the build. But if it doesn't click, then you're getting a dude that never makes it past double A, in my opinion. So I find find it hard to believe that that's who they went with their first pick, with still some good pitchers on the board, and some guys that maybe they could develop. I would have loved to see him go the prep route in that pick, if they're going to try and find somebody that they think they can develop. Obviously, he was playing in the SEC, one of the toughest, the toughest conference in college baseball.
Yeah.
But I think that's still where I would not have gone with that first pick, and maybe they could have even got him in a later round if they felt like he was that projectable. The other worst pick was actually one of the four picks that AC got right. I have Nick Kurtz as being one of the worst picks in the first round. For not because I think he's a bad player by any means, but in my opinion, he does not fit the Athletics timeline. If I'm the Athletics, I feel like I would have went for somebody with a higher ceiling, somebody that could be a future of the franchise. Now, I think Nick Kurtz might be able to slot in as a five hitter, put up good averages, and be a solid first baseman. But in my opinion, with the A's moving to Las Vegas, and having the fourth pick overall, I would have tried to hit the home run there. And I think Nick Kurtz is, in that analogy, is a solid double. Like, I don't think it's a bad pick
Yeah.
at all. But I think I don't know, maybe you go Caglione there. If he hits, then he's a great, he's got a higher ceiling, in my opinion, than Nick Kurtz. And then also maybe you even go Connor Griffin, or somebody like that. Or a front of the line starter. I mean, at that point, Hagen Smith was still on the board at 5. And I think that's where I just kind of disagreed with that selection a little bit and didn't really felt like he fit the timeline, whereas maybe he fit the timeline and could fast track a little bit better. But in this situation, the Athletics are so far off that he's just not the one that I would have went with there at 4.
Yeah, a few things about the Athletics before we move on that aren't necessarily all draft related. But number one, I don't know if you saw this today, but Jacob Wilson is getting called up. Their top prospect. He's the number 6 pick in last year's draft. And what he's done in the minor leagues is crazy. It kind of reminded me of what Jackson Holiday did a little bit last year, just absolutely raked at every level and is just flown up the system. So good for him. Hopefully he can reignite something into that franchise a little bit. Secondly, I don't know if you saw this, but I saw on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, they had the schedule release and they put, instead of putting Oakland for the Athletics, they just put ATH on
Oh,
their.
I did not. I did
Yeah,
not
so
see
like
that.
it's like the classic magnet calendar that you throw in the fridge, and
Mhm.
on the I don't remember what team it was. It might have been Kansas City or Seattle or somebody. I can't remember, but it just says ATH on there, and I thought that was pretty interesting. So they're kind of sidestepping the whole Las Vegas Oakland debate by just putting that in there. And lastly, I do, although I did get this pick correct, I understand where you're coming from with Nick Kurtz not being the guy for them. But it does feel like a safe pick, and like you said, it doesn't necessarily fit the timeline. I mean, they're a long way away from competing, and especially with Jack on the board there. Number 4, he kind of felt like he not fell into your lap, but it seems like if you're going to take a left-handed big bat, why not go him? But I did think that Nick Kurtz might had a chance to go there. At least that was some of the rumblings before the draft, so I wasn't too surprised to see him get taken there. My worst pick in the draft is actually the Brewers taking Braylon Payne at 17, high schooler, and like a lot of the times when you say it might be it's the worst pick in the draft, it's because they're kind of a boomer bust potential, and that's exactly what he is. I mean, it feels like his ceiling is super high, but he is extremely raw, and I just didn't even think that he was going to creep into the top 25, let alone the first round. So to have him at 17 was very surprising to me, and I also just don't think that that's necessarily a fit organizationally for them. But who knows? I mean, we don't have a crystal ball. We're not sitting here with anything like that. So he might end up being a stud if he pans out, but it's going to take him, I would imagine, 6 years before he reaches the major leagues. He's going to be developing for a while.
Really thought about going with Braylon Payne there or PJ Morlando as one of my worst picks. But it was one of the things that I don't know the thing about Brandon Payne is I didn't even know crazy enough about him to make that assumption. And for
Yeah,
some reason, I just kind of in the back of my mind have a little bit of an extra faith in the Brewers organization. It always
yeah,
seems like
that's
that they put together, like it might not seem like it's the right move, or but they always are going to be 10 to 15 games above 500, competing as one of the top teams in the NL Central. And that was kind of what leaned me away from them. And that's why I kind of had a little bit, well, I went with the Nick Kurtz selection for that, but I definitely see that coming in. And I think a lot of people probably saying that share that same opinion about that pick with the Brewers there. I know there's a couple other people that I had that I just felt like didn't fit the timeline, but I still felt like that they could be a quality pick. And those to me were even number 5 with Hagen Smith. I like with the White Sox. I think Hagen Smith is can almost be compared to a Garrett Crochet in the sense that I think they saw some of that in him. But I was kind of shocked with that pick just because, once again, it's hard to turn down a guy that you think you can be a frontline starter, which they probably do see in him. But I thought maybe for them they go a little bit younger, try and find a centerpiece for their position players if they do get rid of Luis Robert here at the deadline. And another one was Christian Moore, who you kind of mentioned before. I mean, it's a classic Angels pick. It's a guy that they can probably fast track. But once again, I feel like the Angels are just so far away from being one of those top teams, and they don't need to call somebody up right away to help them within the next few years. So to me, I maybe would have went somewhere like the pick next after him with the Pirates. Like I could have almost seen them flip flopping their picks. Pirates I actually think are closer than a lot of people would have thought they would be at the start of the year. And then the Angels being so far away, I could have seen them trying to get Connor Griffin as a next high school guy to be the the staple of their organization for time to come. So those I just kind of want to mention those and the interesting picks of some of the organizations that I felt were so far they're 5+ years away from competing for a championship. They still went with guys that are college guys, a little bit older, and probably guys that you expect to be in the bigs and not a super long time. So I just want to kind of mention those.
yeah, and it's hard to determine where guys should go based on that sometimes because you might just have, a great college player sitting
Yeah.
right there for you to take at number 8 if you're the Angels in it. And yeah, he's a good college player, but I didn't think I had other players higher up on the board than Christian Moore left, and I was scratching my head at that. But I just feel like sometimes teams stick too much to the timeline that they've established, especially those lower, smaller market teams, and then they end up taking a high school guy when somebody fell into their lap that's a really good college player. So while it is important to kind of not necessarily stack your prospects to arrive at the same time, but make sure that you have a steady flow going in. You also just need to make sure that you're taking somebody who's going to be a really good Major League Baseball player too, and who you think was going to pan out. So I can understand why some teams go against maybe what everyone else thinks that their timeline is, but here for the Angels at 8, yeah, head scratcher.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So next, the kind of one another thing we'll talk about in this draft is who we thought maybe the best value pick, or what we thought who kind of got away with the steal, maybe as some might say. And mine was Trey Savage. I had him mocked to the Angels at 8, just because I thought he was like a Christian Moore, but of the pitchers. So that's kind of why I saw that there. But I thought he was a higher ceiling guy than Christian Moore.
Mm-hmm.
And to get the Blue Jays to take him, I believe it was the 20th pick. That to me just seemed like a steal. I think he's got high upside as a pitcher. He's proven himself. And there's a lot of things that can go right for Trey Savage. And for him to be swept up, and a lot of people had him in the top 15, if not the top 12, top 10. And to get him there at 20 was just a home run for me. And I think he's a guy that can, he does remind me a little bit of Alek Manoah just based on the size. And he came up quick and had his rough patches these past few years. But I do think that Trey Savage is a great pick there and a guy that can be in the big leagues in a few years and help them and be a top of the line starter. So I thought that was kind of the best value pick there in the first round.
There were a few guys that I was picking between for this one. and two of them are in the top 10. Um, Royals taking Caglione out of Florida, and Cardinals taking Weatherholt out of West Virginia. I think that they both, Jack definitely, I expected to go a little bit higher. I know we're talking about, two picks, but
Yeah.
I did expect him to go in the top five at least. And then I also thought that the Diamondbacks taking Slade Caldwell at 29 was a good value as well. He kind of fits the mold of what they have there. It's they're just going to hit copy and paste with Corbin Carroll and Alec Thomas and everybody else that they've had come through Arizona so far. So I was not surprised to see him get taken up there. It's worked out well for them so far, reaching the World Series last year. And I know Corbin's having a little bit of a down year, but it seems like he's starting to turn it around now. So that's good to see. But ultimately, I went ahead and landed on Jack falling to number 6 to the Royals. I think you had him number 2 in your mock, correct?
I did. I did.
Yeah, and I had him at number 5. So it's not like he fell a ton, but it just felt to me like the Royals really got hit a home run by taking him. And I think that he's going to be a stud for them. They haven't really had. I mean, Salvador Perez has been there for forever. He's probably the best power bat that they've had in a long time. But aside from that, like I'm thinking like left-handed hitter, first baseman. I mean, you could go to like, I don't know, maybe Moustakas when he played there, when he was at third base, was a bit of a power bat for them. But I think like Jack being there, would give them a big boost to their lineup in just a couple of years. And I like what the Royals are building too. They've got their cornerstone player. So to build around him with another guy who's high upside was a big hit for me.
Agree. I mean, obviously, as you said, I had Caglione mocked at my number 2. I think just watching him play, he had that little bit of swagger about him, and just love watching him play. And obviously, I hope he pans out. And if he does, I totally agree with you that the Royals hit a home run there. I mean, if you could imagine a lineup that has a mixture of Salvador Perez stays at a high level, and if you could somehow have a 2, 3, and 4 of Bobby Witt, Salvador Perez, and Jack Caglione in any order, to me is just a group of 3 that can be great. And even if Salvador Perez does regress with some age, you still have those 2 that I feel like are, if obviously you have Bobby Witt, who Bobby Witt is, but if Cags pans out, he can just be the guy there. And them 2 together could be a pain for a lot of pitchers for the rest of the time that they are together. So, kind of one of the last things that I thought that we were going to talk about the draft is any like good picks outside of the first round, anything that we saw that comes with that. And AC, I think you'll like this one that I have here. I wanted to talk a little bit about our fellow HCAC
I
boy
knew you were
Trent
gonna go there.
Trent Youngblood, 10th round pick. Um, Obviously, you gotta love seeing that just as a D3 guy. But seeing
Yeah.
a guy from our own conference, a guy that both of us have faced a decent amount of times, sometimes having success, sometimes not. But it was great to see that. And I think, obviously, I speak super highly of him as a player. It will be interesting because he does have his commitment to UK, as is his grad year. So, I think he's going to sign, and I'd like to see him sign, but I'd also like to see him play at UK. So I could see it going both ways. But he's got speed. He's played in the Coastal Plains League for 2 years, been part of the All-Star teams for that. And obviously, Kentucky saw something with him to want him to come there from the D3 level. So I just think I had to highlight that just because I'm a big Trent Youngblood fan and I hope to see him and follow him throughout his career. And I think he does have some of the tools. I've seen him, his running ability is probably what is graded out as the highest. I know when he first came to college, he was an outfielder and actually a relief pitcher. And then by the time he was graduating, he was playing shortstop for him. But I know he got announced as an outfielder, which is a place that I actually think he was projects better at, just so his speed can play a little bit better. He's got a smooth left-handed bat. I know just watching some of his BP rounds, different things like that. And he plays hard. So I feel like I'd just love to see him succeed and wanted to mention him with that pick because, like I said, we've both faced him, and I hope to see the best for him. And either at Kentucky, one of the best college programs in the country, or in the MLB down the line. We'll see what happens there. So I thought I'd highlight that outside of the first round pick there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he signs. I kind of think that he will. 10th rounds. If he fell later, 15 through 20, he might not. But being at the 10th round, I feel like there's a lot of uncertainties and about, you could get hurt, miss a year, a lot of stuff could go on. And there's no guarantee, right? So if he gets a good offer, I would like to see him put the pen to the paper and sign with, it was Arizona, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll tell my one Trae Youngblood story since all the guys on the team like it anyway. So I don't remember. It was my sophomore year. I don't remember what when where we were in the season, but we were playing them at home, and I was starting on the mound. And the first pitch of the game, I my changeup is pretty good, so I throw my changeup quite a bit, especially to lefties. And first pitch of the game, we start him off with a changeup, and he turns back. He's a left-handed hitter, so the away team's on the first base dugout. So he's standing there, and he turns back to the dugout. He takes it. It's a really good pitch. I don't know how he laid off. He takes it, turns back, and signals changeup to the dugout. And then in my head, I'm just thinking, oh boy, here we go. Very next pitch, fastball on the outer half, and he went dead center, home run off of me. So that was my introduction to Trent Youngblood. I had heard about how good he was, but and he was hurt his sophomore year, my freshman year. So I think he played in the series, but he wasn't fully healthy. So that was the first time I'd ever seen him like fully healthy playing. And he might have even been coming off of that shoulder injury that he sustained too. So, but looking back on it, it's funny. And at the time I was like, okay, that's how today is going to start. And it didn't turn out well for me personally, but the Beavers got the win, so I'll never complain about that. But
Yeah,
that's my Trae Youngblood story.
I know. I remember that very vividly, and I
Yeah,
remember talking about that. And cool story. I remember when I faced him. I think it was probably the year before that, maybe. I was throwing, and he hit like a hard chopper. We were kind of shifting him up the middle a little bit, and I remember he hit like a hard chopper, and I stuck my hand out to like try and grab it. Me trying to make a play, and we ended up getting him out, but. I didn't field it. Shortstop fielded it, threw him out at first, and I remember for the next two batters, I like couldn't even feel my fingers because that was how hard he hit the ball.
yeah.
And then but yeah, great player. So, do you have anybody else any good picks that you thought outside the first round or any?
I thought the catcher from Cal was going to go in the first round, Loma
Yeah,
Vita, but I was surprised to see him fall outside of the top 30. I can't remember where he went, but I thought he was going to be in the first round. He ended up not going. Walker Janik, who was probably the number one catcher on the board, maybe number two behind him, from Sam Houston State, he ended up getting taken. So that was just surprising to me. I mean, there's obviously some value there if you're going to get somebody who was supposed to be a first round pick and they fall to a compensation round or the second round.
I agree. Definitely some of those catchers you see get up there early, and I think, or maybe even develop with some of the pitchers. But he's got the ability, I think, to stay in the catcher position and really be a future catcher in the major leagues. And that's always a steal if you can get somebody like that. So,
Yeah.
I don't know, AC, you have anything else you really want to cover with the draft or? Um,
No, I just like to say that I did win as much as anybody can.
Yeah, yeah. And that was a funny thing. I remember I was looking at it and I was like, oh, like I got three. And then I felt a little bit better after I saw a thing on Twitter saying that Jim Callis and Jonathan Mayo only got one and two in their mock drafts, right? Like, so I was like, hey, it makes me feel a little bit better
Yeah.
that, we got three and four. So I'm not saying we're the next Jonathan Mayo and Jim Callis, but definitely a hard thing to do. So.
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult. I was surprised that I got four, honestly. Once I saw Travis go number one, I kind of had a good idea that I was going to go ahead and get number seven correctly as well,
Yeah.
because that was just the buzz. I mean, that's I don't do any reporting, man. That's just what I see. So like me reading a bunch of other people's stuff, it's not like I came to this conclusion. You know what I mean? Like a bunch of other people came to this conclusion for me. So once you get outside of the top 10, stuff just gets so jumbled up. I mean, your best chance of getting any picks right is definitely the top 10, probably the top 5. If you get, one or two wrong in there, then it shifts everything off. And yeah, you if you get the number one pick right, you're probably in decent shape. But like we saw this year, I don't think many people had Burns going 2. And if they did, then it was, a pro, And so when he went 2, that kind of threw me off as well. But I was happy with how I ended up. I think I got 1, 4, 7, and 11 correct. So, but the bottom rounds, you can throw them out the window. Those were horrible for me.
I think I was like, looking at it right here, like 9. I think I got Pittsburgh right, Detroit
Yeah.
right, Chicago. So I think I went like 9, 11, and 14, which I was a little bit
Yeah.
surprised that it was that far down that I got my picks right because I thought, not that I thought I had it right in the top, but like you said, it's as you get lower in the draft, it's usually a little bit harder to get those. I was nervous after like the first 7 that I was going to go over, and I was like, that might not be a good look there. But kind of transition to the next thing. Obviously, the past couple days, we had the home run derby and all-star game, and we just wanted to highlight some of the things. I have a couple of thoughts about mostly the all-star game that I wanted to talk about, but nothing really too in depth, but kind of just highlighting the event. So I think the thing about the home run derby that I want to talk about the most is obviously it's been years now, but the winner used to get the home field advantage for the World Series, So I always thought that that was an interesting way to run the All Star game. Um, and I was just kind of thinking of your thoughts. Do you like the setup that it is now that doesn't really have anything tied to it? It's a little bit for pride. Um, or did you like that it maybe added a little bit more extra to that game and added a little bit of maybe players playing a little bit harder, different things like that?
I I personally loved it. I
Yeah.
loved that it counted for home field advantage. Um, I also think it's stupid. It's weird.
Yeah.
Like it was awesome because every other sport we watched the NFL Pro Bowl and it's the biggest joke I've ever witnessed. And same thing with the NBA All-Star game, honestly. No one's out there playing defense. I think they play till it's 144 or something like that. It's some or 170. It's ridiculous. Like, okay, yeah, we see some cool plays like that's fine and everything, but I would rather see like an actual good game than anything. And we did get a good game this year, and we normally do. But like one thing that I noticed is just like Mason Miller was really the only guy who was in there trying to throw it as hard as he could. I think maybe Skeens let one rip. My guy Hunter Green didn't really go after it with the fastball, and he was missing middle. It was good to see him in it though. I'm never going to complain about seeing a Reds guy in there. So, but I loved just having the. It means something. Like no other sport is like that. No other sport does the All Star game mean more than it did in Major League Baseball. And when it went away, it did take something away from the game. But that is kind of an absurd way to decide home field advantage in something as important as the World Series. So if they could find a different way for it to factor into something, then that would be awesome. But I don't think it's going to happen.
I agree with you. I think the coolest thing and what still makes the all baseball All Star game have a little bit more meaning and like a little bit more seriousness with it. It's just that like at the end of the day, you can't fake a 97 miles per hour fastball. Like,
Oh yeah.
like there's still a little bit of, hey, you still got to throw hard. You're still playing the game. I know like Trey Turner made a nice diving play and different things like that, which is always nice to see. And that's like something like you said in the Pro Bowl, like they don't hit each other, different things like that. Or in basketball, they're not playing any defense. So there is still, I feel like, a little bit more legitimacy to
Hmm.
the game. But like you said, it is kind of a stupid way to determine who gets home field advantage for the World Series. But it always was like, oh, I got to tune in to make sure like I see this where I still tuned in. But it always was cool to know that, hey, there's something more to this game and not just this
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
Um, Another thought I had about this game, and actually in between these, I'm going to sandwich it with a futures game take. But I always love watching the futures game. I know when it was The All-Star game was in Cincinnati. I want to say it was in 2015. I actually went to the Futures game there. I feel like that's kind of where my like prospect love and draft love kind of came from. I think like
Yeah.
Aaron Judge played in that game and a bunch of other studs played in that game in 2015. So it was really cool to see that. But one of our guys from the Cincinnati Reds, Cam Collier, taking home MVP is always something really cool to see. And it is just cool to see a bunch of talent, especially just at different levels. Like you have guys there in AAA, and then you have guys that were in single A, like Sebastian Walcott, for the Rangers. They're at like 18 years old, playing against guys that are a step away from the big leagues. And I think it's really cool to see that. And it kind of just holds a little bit of legitimacy to how good of a prospect they are. I know like Cam Collier, he's had his ups and downs in his pro career, and he's in Dayton right now, and has been hitting some home runs, but the average isn't like anything crazy. But it was cool to see like he's going against real talent out there, guys that have had a lot of success um, in the minor leagues and are probably going to have a lot of success in pro ball. And he took away MVP, which I thought was something cool to see because I've loved Cam Collier ever since the Reds drafted him, seeing him play a couple times in Dayton, and a guy that I always just root for. So it was cool to see him taking home Futures Game MVP in that.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved that pick. When the Reds took him, I think it was 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And at the time he was 17, coming out of 1 year of JUCO already out of Chipola, which was awesome. So I was ecstatic to see him win the Futures Game MVP. But like you said, he's kind of struggled in the minors a little bit. I wouldn't even say struggled. It's more so like I think I saw one scout describe it as, or insider, he described it as he can hit for power or he can hit for average. And right now he's trying to do both. And while that might be true, I actually think that he can do both. And we've seen him, his OPS has never really dropped below like the 750 mark. So that's good. And he definitely has good bat to ball skills, but it's just interesting to see guys go up against, like you said, like 19-year-olds that are just now into A ball going against somebody who is probably a month away from being called up, or they'll get called up in September. So it is a cool game. I wish it was 9 innings instead of 7. But yeah, big congrats to Cam Collier on that. That's really cool. And Rhett Lauder pitched a scoreless inning, which was good.
I always thought Cam Collier's swing at his best, it reminded me of Rafi Devers, like that smooth,
Mm,
long lefty swing. I know it's not the exact same, but I always saw that. I was like, if
yeah.
if everything clicks, you kind of have that type of player, maybe playing a third base, defense not
Hmm.
necessarily the best, but putting him in Great American. I love when people call it Great American Small Park. Send him in there and maybe seeing some success there. And I think it's still to come. I think he's only 19, maybe a fresh 20 now, but I think he'll be there, and it still has time to develop. I mean, and I
Yeah.
think will
Yeah.
happen. So, kind of the last thing that I had about the All-Star game was my two favorite pitchers that pitched in the All-Star game both got hit pretty hard. That being Hunter Green and Tanner Houck. I
Hmm.
love watching both of them throw. Obviously, as a Reds fan, you gotta love Hunter Green, and he was just even his outs were like deep fly balls to center
Yeah. Oh
field.
yeah. He was
Kind
missing
of
right over the middle, man. And it wasn't even like his stuff was bad. I remember him throwing a really, really good splitter. I can't remember who was up. It was left-handed bat, just swung right over the top of it. I was like, hey, like if he can get that down, that's looking really good. And then he threw one right down the middle, and it got absolutely clobbered. So I just felt like his command wasn't there. While he didn't like walk people, he just wasn't putting it in the spots where they couldn't hit it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when Jaron Duran hit that ball, it was absolutely crushed
It was a
off
no
of him.
doubter. I thought
Yeah,
Seaver's was a no doubter.
I did too. I did too.
I couldn't believe
Um,
that.
And then my guy Tanner Houck, I mean his like I don't know if he calls it a slider or a sweeper. I don't know exactly what he calls it, but to me that's my favorite pitch to watch in baseball. I've seen it many times start behind a right-handed bat and break to the middle part of the plate. And so I just love watching him pitch, and I think he got hit for 2 or 3 runs as well. So I just thought it was funny that two of the guys that I like watching the most and two of the guys that I think can be future already number ones on their team, but future stars. And I guess they already all are all stars, but get touched up. Now they're getting hit by major league hitters and all stars as well. But
Yeah,
I thought I just wanted to call that out.
yeah,
Seeing two of my guys that I'm really rooting for not have that success in the All Star game.
yeah.
You got any thoughts or anything? Anything your thoughts on the All Star game or?
I mean, I'd say with Elliott Hunter in it this year, I was a little bit more tuned in than I probably have been in the last years. You know, it's kind of been something that I just kind of keep on while I'm doing something else. But this year I was a little bit more dialed in, and Ellie had a base knock, which was awesome. You know, I just want to see him succeed so bad. He deserves it, and people love to call him overrated, and it's like people say that, and it's not like he's putting the stuff. He doesn't run the MLB Instagram account. You know what I mean? Like he's not choosing to put that stuff up. Like he's a really cool player. So it was just nice watching some good Reds baseball players get in there. You know, for a while we would have like Adam Duvall get in there, who is a good player, but it's like, okay, the Reds need like a perennial all-star. You know, Votto only had 6 selections because he was so bad in the first halves. Not so bad, but he was like 280 hitter, would hit like 10 home runs at the break. And, you know, when you're in a league with Paul Goldschmidt and Freddie Freeman, who are putting up the numbers that they were every single year, they're going to get the vote every single time. So Votto just was such a good hitter in the second half of seasons. If he could have had a 4 month spring training, he probably would be Barry Bonds up there. But yeah, it was awesome. I enjoyed it more so than I have in the past. I thought the jerseys were terrible. I'm pretty sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the National League is supposed to be in red, right?
Yes, I believe so.
So why were they in blue and the American League was in hot pink and tan? Like
Yeah,
like it's not even the fact the jerseys weren't good, in my opinion. The jerseys weren't good. Some people had it was mixed reviews on that. But you can at least put them in the right color.
I
Like that's
agree.
not
I agree.
that's a low bar, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. That made me mad more than anything. That's just a little pet peeve.
For sure. And then home run derby, honestly, I didn't I was had it in the background on the same night college football came out. So I was playing college football and had it on in the background. And
Yeah.
um, I don't know, I've just kind of I feel like it was something that I loved and was super tuned in when I was young. And now I don't know if it's just lost it a little bit with my age, or maybe not as high caliber home run hitters, maybe potentially being in it. I don't really know. But it was just something that I kind of had in the background. No key takeaways. I know the biggest takeaway was probably the national anthem from that event. I know,
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah. Mm,
Ingrid Andrews coming away, saying now she's going into rehab and things like that. But
that's
um,
crazy. That is such a wild turn of events.
yeah,
I'm just gonna
I
leave it
thought it
at
was like
that.
a meme account that posted it out first. Like I was like, no way, that's true. And then it was like, no, this
Uh,
is actually her.
that
But
was rough.
definitely, I don't know, not too many takes from there. But I think to kind of wrap up this podcast, we're kind of going to go into three bullet predictions that we have for the second half. I kind of made mine progressively hotter in takes, and kind of I could see some of them happening. Some of them are kind of far fetched, but I don't know. AC, you want to kick us off with maybe your first prediction?
Yeah, my first one is that I think the Guardians are going to finish third in the AL Central. Yeah, I think that the Royals and Twins are both going to finish above them. I think that the Twins are hot on their tail right now. I think the Royals are 7 games back. I just don't think that the Guardians are going to stay this hot for this long, for as long as they are. They're 30 and 11, I think, at home, which is absurd. Like they're going to start losing games at home at some point. The rotation has big question marks surrounded by it. McKenzie's been sent down. I think Allen, who had been in the rotation and bullpen a little bit, has been sent down too. And this is probably going to strike a chord with a lot of our Cleveland fans that might be watching. But I just don't know how sustainable the success is, especially when the calling card for Cleveland has always been the strength of their pitching staff. And right now it's Bybee and no one else. Like McKenzie needs to figure out whatever's going on. I was watching him pitch against the Reds, and he was throwing 89-mile-an-hour four seams, and that's just like that's not him. He's clearly still recovering from his injuries. So I just don't know about where they could end up. You know, they there's a really good chance that they finish top of the division and just shut me right up. You know, but there would be no surprise to see them kind of fall off towards the end of the season here, and they have a big stretch against the Tigers here too. And the Tigers are starting to roll a little bit. I mean, they just swept the Reds, which is not exactly a David versus Goliath story there, but still, you know, you get some momentum going. Colt keeps turning a corner, so they have a little bit of a tougher schedule ahead of them now. So I'm interested to see how they do. But yeah, I got them finishing third.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I remember going into the year thinking that the AL Central was the weakest division in baseball, and I think they've slowly started to prove me wrong. You know,
Yeah.
I thought the Twins preseason was going to win the division. I thought the Guardians would probably finish second, and then I honestly thought it was going to be Tigers at third. But the
Yeah.
Royals have been a huge surprise for me this year. And then I think the Twins just have a solid squad if Carlos Correa keeps on producing. You know, Brooks
Mhm.
Lee, if maybe Royce Lewis can get healthy and play well, and they got some good starters up there. So I think that I definitely would not be shocked if the Twins finish one, Guardians finish two. But if like Seth Lugo and the Royals can keep going, I wouldn't be shocked if they take them over. And you know, the Guardians have got some production from guys like David Fry, who was an All-Star this year, who
Mhm.
and Josh Naylor and Jose Ramirez, and obviously Jose Ramirez is a all-star every year, but to keep up the production that like David Fry had in the first year would be great to see. But I'm just not sure, like you said, if it's fully sustainable, if their pitching staff isn't the backbone of that team. So I definitely
Yeah.
don't don't I could see it happen. Don't mind that prediction there.
And
My
Kwan's
first,
not going to hit 360 for the whole season either. You know,
that's
he's going
fair.
to win the batting title and he's probably going to hit 320. You
Yeah.
know, and he's really really good. But I at a certain point in time that's just got to drop.
I agree. I agree. My first prediction, I don't even know if it's a bold take, but I just kind of want to talk about it a little bit, and kind of say the reasoning behind it. But I had Bobby Witt winning AL MVP, and
Mm.
this could be a little bit if the Royals, you know, maybe start winning games and finish second in the division, like you kind of just predicted, and maybe get a wild card spot or even find themselves in the first of the division, then I wouldn't be shocked at all to see this happen. And I know the kind of two front runners right now are Aaron Judge and Gunnar Henderson to take that AL MVP spot. But I think Gunnar Henderson being his first like full year in the big leagues, playing a 162 game season, I just don't know if his numbers are fully sustainable. And then Aaron Judge, obviously great player. But I don't see him putting up the home runs that he did in the first half. You know, I kind of maybe see in him. I think he's at like 34 right now, somewhere around there. I seen him maybe getting 15 home runs and finishing at the low 50s. But I just don't know if he's going to sustain that like over 1,000 OPS, crazy numbers. And with Bobby Witt's batting average being around 320, he's playing a great defensive shortstop. He's being a cornerstone of the team. He's 24 years old, swiping bags. I just see him winning that MVP, and he's one of my favorite players to watch play. And that was kind of my first take of Bobby Witt taking that MVP crown in the AL. So,
I'm surprised to hear that from an Aaron Judge fantasy manager.
well, I'm also now a Bobby Witt fantasy manager. I don't know if you saw the
Oh, there it
trade go
is.
through, but yeah, I
Okay.
definitely gave up a lot for that. So I guess I'm a little bit of both there. So,
Okay. I mean, I can't say that I'm in the same boat. I think Bobby Wood's phenomenal. But it just seems to me like Aaron Judge's first month by his standards were just dreadful. I think, and by dreadful, he might have had like an 800 OPS. But for him, like for a guy that's extremely good, his first month was rough, and he's overcome that to put up an incredible slash line right now and just continue to rake. I remember watching him in the Red Series and just thinking to myself, please don't let him get up in the ninth inning. When Diaz was coming in, it was like 7, 8, 9. I'm like, if you let nobody on, we don't have to face Soto or Judge, you know. So or maybe it was 8-9-1. But anyway, I think Judge wins it, but there's certainly a world where Witt does. I think he'll probably end up being top 3. But I don't know if Judge even just plays average baseball from here on out. I still think that he'd probably average for him. Sorry, average for him. I should clarify. Then he would probably take the crown in that one. My second prediction is that the Pirates are going to make the playoffs. Obviously, this might be an overreaction to Paul Skeens coming up and just being the best pitcher that the world has ever seen, hyperbolically. But I do think that they are going to trade for a bat at some point near the deadline. They have like good players around. They just have a couple holes in the lineup that they need to figure out. I think Nick Gonzalez is also very good. I was high on him when he was getting drafted. So I like the Pirates a lot. I think that they have a lot of ways to improve, that they don't need to sell the farm to do it. And by doing that, I think that they're just going to like improve the lineup just slightly enough to make them, an 88-win team, which I think would get them in.
I like that. And actually, it's crazy that you say that because it's kind of goes hand in hand with my second prediction. And I don't even know, once again, if this is a crazy bold take, but I got Paul Skeens winning Rookie of the Year and Cy Young. I think obviously he didn't get called up and didn't get in there at the start of the year. And I think with the Pirates, like you said, maybe potentially making a push. I know some people, like, if they're not making that push, they might put him on an innings limit or restrict him. But I see them making a little bit of a push, and so they're not going to do that to Paul Skeens, their number one starter. And just the dominance that he's shown, I mean, even in the All-Star game, dotting up 99 and that splinker at 94, like he threw it to Juan Soto and made him look dumb. So if you're making Juan Soto look dumb, it's something nasty. And I just think obviously I'm hopping on the Paul Skeens bandwagon, but I think that he's going to be the guy that takes the NL Cy Young. As of now, there's no like crazy front runners. I know like Chris Sale had potentially been mentioned as like a guy that's up there right now. But I just got Paul Skeens taking it away. I think so far he's got like a 1.9 ERA and a crazy K per 9 and has, I think, is 6-0. I don't even know if he's lost a start in the big league. So
hasn't lost a game in the show.
Yeah, so I got him taking home the Cy Young and Rookie of the Year there as well. So just another prediction in the awards categories there for me.
Yep, I completely agree. I wouldn't even. Yeah, at this point, that's. I don't know if that's a hot take necessarily because it's almost become the perception of fans, who have watched him and like. I forget what the stat was, but the thing about him taking a no-hitter into the 7th inning, like only him and Nolan Ryan have done it. Like we can cherry pick stats like that all day, but it's still impressive. You know what I mean? And so I'm in the same boat as you. I think that he's definitely the front runner for Rookie of the Year. I think there's no doubt about that, and I would say that he's even with anybody else in the Cy Young race.
Agree. It'll be, and I would be shocked. Like I kind of agree with yours that the Pirates are going to be making a run. I think just with that pick, it skyrocketed their, like we talked about the timelines for a lot of teams. It fast tracked that timeline, probably like by a few years. Him and Jared Jones production together, Mitch Keller. I mean, that 3-headed monster there is really good. I know some of their minor leaguers like Anthony Salameto has struggled a little bit this year, but they still have some really good pitchers in the farm that I think you attack this year, maybe get a free agent signing or something like that, and then I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with just because of their pitching staff in the years to come in the Central.
Yeah. All right, my last hot take, and this one is pretty hot. Okay, I have the San Francisco Giants trading for Bo Bichette. Okay, so my thought process behind this is there aren't a ton of really contending teams that absolutely need a shortstop, and it seems like Toronto is kind of dead set on trading him, trying to get the most value out of them that they possibly can, which makes sense to me. And it just seems like Since Brandon Crawford, they haven't really had that shortstop who's been very good for them. I think is Blake Wisely their everyday shortstop right now.
I think he's getting a lot of time there.
Yeah, so like he's good. I mean, he's a young guy. Or Brett Wisely. It's Brett Wisely, not Blake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, he is. I think he's doing a pretty good job there, as far as I know. But I think just adding an absolute star out there would help them a lot. And Bichette struggled this year, so hopefully he turns it on a little bit. But you would also you pair him back up with Matt Chapman on the left side of the infield, which might be adding some chemistry there, and just continue to build what you've been building in a division that while the Dodgers are number one, everybody else is kind of wavering a little bit. So you could go ahead and get yourself deep into that wild card race with everybody in the NL, and take advantage of the Diamondback struggles and the Padres struggles, and of course the Rockies that you're probably going to play 15 more times this year. Just take advantage of that and try to make your way into the playoffs.
Yeah, I definitely would like to see that trade. I think it could benefit both teams. I think the Blue Jays, like you said, are kind of in a tough spot right now. Like you had for a while, they felt like Vlad and Bo Bichette were going to be like the cornerstone pieces that are going to lead them to AL East championships and potentially more than that. And I think they've been decent. They've never been like a bad club, but I think um, they can maybe rebuild a little bit. And with the Yankees playing well, Red Sox have been a little bit surprising. Orioles being dominant, I wouldn't hate to see that. So kind of the last thing I have, I did want to talk about something real quick. Then I'll go with my last prediction because I think it's my last one's pretty interesting. But I saw today that there was like obviously there's been talks about Tarek school trade rumors. They said Dodgers and Orioles were leaning that way, and I was reading something on Twitter and it said that the Tigers would trade Tarek school and a reliever for Jackson Holiday, Kobe Mayo, and Dylan Beavers.
Whoa.
And I was shocked because, in my opinion, Jackson Holiday and Kobe Mayo are both top 10 prospects in baseball. So I wouldn't see them getting rid of both. Honestly, if I'm the Tigers, I might even do one Dylan Beavers. Like, I might do like Kobe Mayo, Dylan Beavers, and another person. But if you're the Tigers and you get any type of offer like that, I think it's a no-brainer. And I could also see the reasoning a little bit on the Orioles side. I think it's a little bit too much to give up. But you have, I think Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman are obviously the staples of that organization. Jackson Holiday, if he does come up, he'll play second base. And he obviously showed a struggle this year. I don't think it will be who he is, but they might not be as 100% confident that he's what they thought he was. And I honestly think Kobe Mayo, I mean, he's been batting above 300, hitting bombs left and right. So I'd be shocked if they did that. But I could see the Orioles, if you could pair Tarek Schoolball, Corbin Burns, and if Grayson Rodriguez is on and have a three-headed rotation of those three with the lineup that they already have, I think it could put them as a World Series favorites. But I don't know if you'd be willing to give up that much of the farm for something like that. But I thought that was something interesting. I thought I'd throw out there that I saw
Yeah.
today.
I mean, that's very interesting. We don't see a lot of trades go down like that, where um, an absolute stud goes for the number one prospect in baseball. So, let alone multiple guys. But I mean, I would be interested to see if maybe they could, and this is me just spitballing, but I would be interested to see if they could maybe package Javi Baez in there, get rid of his contract.
Mhm.
If you're gonna trade Scooble, almost the most valuable thing for you is maybe to also get rid of Baez if you're gonna bring in, especially somebody like Holiday that you could pair up the middle with Colt Keith for the rest of their 6 years that they have on their rookie contracts or whatever they are. So, I mean, it's definitely an interesting thought. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I definitely would do it if I'm Detroit. Um, I wouldn't be opposed to it if I'm Baltimore, but you just have to know that there's a chance that you're giving away a Hall of Fame talent.
And potentially both of them. Like
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
like And I think I was
You better
interested
try
to
to re-sign him long term if you're going to
yeah.
do that. If you're Baltimore,
Yeah, I was thinking about a potential lineup for the Tigers, what that would look like. And I was like,
hmm
because they were saying, because you also have Jace Young, who's
yep,
somewhere in the infield. They were talking, I was thinking maybe they'd move like Colt Keith or Jace Young to first base. But you also have
hmm
Torkelson. I know he struggled, but still was the number one overall pick in 2020.
yeah, you
Um,
can't write him off just yet.
yeah, and then so you would have like you could have like let's say Colt Keith at first, Jace Young at second, Jackson Holiday at short, and then you'd have Kobe Mayo at third, and you'd have Riley Green in the outfield. You know, you got Max Clark who's still a ways away.
Yeah,
Um, but I thought it was a ton of kind of fun to think about, and I think that would be huge for both organizations.
yeah,
But I think that favors the Tigers a little bit more. But I wouldn't be shocked to see Baltimore say, "Hey, let's go all in. Let's try and get it." I think the AL's favorite for Cy Young right now, and let's try and win the World Series this year and at least solidify themselves for a while. Because Tarek Schoolball is only, I think, 27 years old, so it's not like
yeah,
he's got years where you could say could somewhat reason if we can get a Cy Young candidate for the next 6 years, then okay, then you could probably reason with it a little bit. So I just want to throw that out there. But my last hot take, a little bit bolder than my other ones, but I think two players from this year's MLB draft will be called up by the end of the year to the major leagues. And my two are Christian Moore, who's obviously as the Angels, they've done it before. They did it with Nolan Shanuel last year.
yeah.
Um, so I wouldn't be surprised that. And my other one, and this is probably just wishful thinking for me, but I'm saying Chase Burns. I'm very hopeful that the Reds make a run and need a high energy bullpen arm that can come out of the bullpen and be a guy paired with Alexis Diaz, Fernando Cruz, and shut down the end of the ball games. I'm making it a bold prediction because even like Brett Lauder last year, the Reds shut him down and didn't even let him throw an inning in the minor leagues. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if they did that with Chase Burns just because he probably does put a lot of stress on his arm, threw a lot of pitches this year, went deep into games. But um, that's kind of my bold prediction. I don't know. I think maybe some other guys, like I think Nick Kurtz could fit in on an athletics roster right now and wouldn't be too far out of it. But I don't think they'll do that. But that was kind of my bold prediction. Obviously, it's under the understanding that the Reds make a run and that they're having Chase Burns throw. But I honestly don't think Chase Burns would be overmatched in a one inning scenario in the big leagues. I don't know if he's ready for starting ability yet, but I think in a one inning scenario, he can go all out, throw that 101 miles per hour fastball with a nasty breaker off of it. I think he could bring some extra energy that's always wanted there in Great American and maybe create a little run in the second half because I think the Reds are 8 games back of the Central, maybe like 3 or 4 games back of the wild card. And I think that could be a big help to them. So that's kind of my last take. I don't know the last time. I don't know if it's ever happened that two players, at least in my recent memory, like I think of Nolan Shanuel, I think of Garrett Crochet, two guys that got called up, but that's two draft classes. Um, I don't know, and not maybe in a past 10 years that one person's got called up. So kind of bold to think too. And it probably won't happen. Who knows if even any of them get called up, but that's what my last bold prediction is.
Yeah. Christian Moore, I think you could definitely see that. I just think the Angels are unconventional. Would be the nice way to put it in how they do business there. I don't think it's the correct move, but I think it could happen. In fact, I actually think that I wouldn't say it's likely, but I don't think anybody would be surprised to see it. Burns, on the other hand, there's a few reasons why I don't think it will happen. Okay. So, one, the Reds have to contend. That's the biggest one right there. It's like, okay, will they be contenders? They're kind of on the fence. Okay. Number two, Rhett Lauder is still ahead of him in the system in terms of development. I think that they want to get Rhett up before they get Chase up, which makes me think that he won't get called up before him. I don't know how Rhett would fit into a bullpen. He probably wouldn't. So for that reason, maybe Burns would go over him, like you said, like just adding him to the pen for the end of the year. be really fun. And 3, and you might not have seen this, but right after he signed, they had a press conference, and the one of the Reds scouting directors, I forget his name, but he said that he does have some innings to throw this year, but that led me to believe by him saying some innings that he's not going to go full, like, they're not just going to cut him loose and single A and let him work. So that just makes me think that they're not going to throw him. They're not going to try to fast track him, like they understand the development behind it. And, while it would be really fun and I'd love to see it, I'm not sure that a wild card berth in this season would be worth kind of skewing his development, even though I don't think it would at all. But in their minds, I think that's their thought process behind it.
No, and I agree with you. I did not see them say that he's got some innings to throw. Not shocked by that at all.
Yeah.
My thing about Rhett Lauder, I just don't like, kind of like you mentioned, I just don't see him as a bullpen guy.
He's
And
no,
I
not at
know
all.
his numbers, they've been a little bit inflated in Chattanooga.
Hmm.
Like I think his FIP is like 2 points lower than his, or yeah, 2 points lower than his ERA. And he's actually been decent his last couple starts. He did get roughed around a little bit in his first few.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I feel even though Rhett was drafted before him and Rhett was a very accomplished pitcher and very good pitcher, honestly I think Chase Burns is better than him. Like he's
Hmm.
more electric. He's got better
Yes.
stuff.
Yep.
Um, and I think I could see them together. But in my opinion, Rhett's a guy that has success because he it's not because he's got the best stuff ever. Like he's a great pitcher. It's not that he's like a great stuff wise, where I think Chase Burns has amazing stuff and has maybe a little bit development to go on the pitching side of things. Like I know his home runs are
Yeah.
concerned, probably his location a little bit. I know he got tons of swing and misses on balls in the dirt in college.
Yeah.
And who knows if a pro hitter is going to be chasing those. So those type of things I think are things that probably would be good for Burns to slow down a pace a little bit. But it is a little bit wishful thinking for me to think that the Reds are in contention, which maybe, like I said, is wishful thinking, and B, that he is one of the top pitchers and can come in right away and be a guy for him. So I just thought that was an interesting little topic there to kind of
Yeah.
wrap up our show.
No, I like it. I do. Like personally, like that'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
Um, and that's why it's a hot take because it's not supposed to happen, but it might. So
yeah,
I love it, but yeah, and if it happens, I'd be surprised.
and
I put some money on it, but I don't think
yeah.
you're giving me good enough odds.
Yeah, once again I'm not very confident. Definitely not as confident as my other two takes.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be cool to see, even if he is in the minors, just cool to see him throw some innings. If he goes down to Dayton this year, I'm 100% going down to watch him
Oh yeah,
throw.
me too. Yeah,
Um, I know I've
I'm
loved
picking
going
it
to
up on
some.
the way down.
Yeah, I don't know. I went to Noelvi Marte's debut there when he got
Yeah.
traded, and
Yep.
went to a couple other games. So if he's throwing there, I'm going. And I know I missed Rhett there because he was only there for about half a year, if that. Not
If not
even,
even.
maybe
Yeah.
a third of the year.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
was
I didn't
there
get.
for Lodolo when he got drafted his first collegiate start, and I was thinking, I'm like, man, like I hope I want to see how he does, and like I keep forgetting like they're on an innings limit, so they throw like 3 innings, and
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah,
So like his first start out, he did well, but yeah, like 3 innings max.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So yeah,
All right, well, you ready to break this thing down?
yeah.
All right, so next week, I think we're gonna be breaking down the trade deadline, correct?
Yeah, that does. I think, yeah, we'll be leading up into the trade deadline and maybe trades we'd like to see and different things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and pay attention for that. Dropping next week, we'll be going over what we think is going to be happening at the trade deadline. I'm Andrew. That's Carson. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you.